See, everyone's got this idea that demons are just these things that go around marauding randomly, and it's not true. They are extraordinarily consistent for three reasons. One, actually for two primary reasons. One is their will is fixed in evil, and so they want to perform those particular things that they chose as evil, and so they're kind of fixed in that. The second thing is God, as I mentioned, is complete control. So they're very consistent in their behavior. Okay, so this is we can watch these patterns. Well, one of the patterns that we started noticing over the course of time was that the people who were getting diabolically attacked were precisely the people who lacked elementary discipline in their spiritual life, and I mean elementary. What does that mean? Well, it means that about 80% of the people that had diabolic obsession, where the demons are attacking the imagination and the emotions, was because they didn't have any interior discipline in their spiritual life. These are people that are actually going to Mass on a consistent basis, Sundays and even holy days of obligation, getting to confession on a somewhat regular basis. They might even be saying the rosary every day. But there was not, the most notable thing in this was there was a lack of some area of their life or areas in their lives where they were every single day practicing self-denial. That's what discipline is. Discipline is basically what? It's technically speaking, it's a virtue in the will by which we maintain control of our lower faculties and direct them and guide them according to reason. And so they weren't doing that. Most people today, for example, in their eating habits are completely undisciplined. If the gut didn't burst, they would just be eating uncontrollably, right? But this is an important point. The point being is that what we started to see is a consistent lack of discipline in these people's lives. So what we did is we designed this protocol. Okay, then you got to get up and say the Angelus at 6, noon, and 6. And there's two reasons we chose the Angelus. The first is because getting up at 6, I cannot tell you how many people. Can it be 7? No, it has to be 6. Well, why can't it be 7? Because it nullifies the whole point, right? The point is you have to practice self-denial every single day somewhere in your spiritual life. If you don't, then you're going to become spiritually soft. It means you don't have full strength over your lower faculties, and that is a prescription for diabolic victory. We know this just by basic spiritual, by any kind of warfare. If you have to choose between an army that sits around eating bonbons and talks a lot about stuff, they might know an awful lot, but they're not doing a whole lot and they're soft, as opposed to one that works out consistently every day and practices self-denial and is doing all those brutal hikes and this and that thing, you're going to go after the soft target. And that's why demons are attacking people. But it also means if you practice that self-denial, then it'll blow them out. So it's that maintaining the discipline of the lower faculties, because the demons know that if they try and attack those faculties, you're going to have the strength from that discipline to say no, right? And so they'll get defeated, so they're going to stay away from you. But it also means that in that, the other aspect of the reason we chose the Angelus is because we started noticing as a pattern that the liberations in people's possessions all started to revolve around one of two doctrines, either the doctrine of the incarnation or the passion and death of Christ. And so that's one of the reasons we started putting people on that. So we have them say the Auxilium Christianorum prayers and the Angelus 6, noon, and 6. And what we started to notice is just by putting people on that prayer prescription, 80% of people who suffer from diabolic oppression and obsession cleared it out within 2 to 3 months. But that tells us, right? That tells us, most of the time you don't need to see an exorcist. You don't even necessarily need to see your priest. What you need to do is you need to just start practicing elementary discipline. It has to be something you have to teach your children. There has to be some area of self-denial where they're doing it every single day so that they have that strength interiorly to engage in the spiritual warfare. You can also say a variety of different prayers. Another thing that you can start doing, and this is the kind of the last thing, if advancing in holiness, by the way, so if your prayers are more efficacious, right, because the fact that they have more merit because you're holier, it also means that the holier you become, the more your prayers are going to be efficacious in the spiritual battle and the spiritual warfare, so that you don't have to pray as much to get the demons beat up and get them out, right? And we see this, right? So the fact that St. Catherine of Siena, one of the most holy women in history, walks into a public square and tells Satan, get out, and boom, he's out, right? And here I am saying the ritual over and over and over again. Which, by the way, Catherine of Siena has shown up. Not that I've seen her, but the people who are possessed have seen her. But anyway, the point being is this tells you that that holiness gives you the ability to drive the diabolic out and to engage in the battle in a much more efficacious fashion. But that means that you have to overcome those defects and start building those virtues and start working on that so that you become holy. You reach that sanctified perfection, which I mentioned. And that means that you're going to have to discover what your defects are. See, the demons can block you from seeing what your problems are and what your defects are. So what you need to do is ask Our Lady of Sorrows, specifically under that title, reveal to me what is the foundational defect that your son wants me to work on. More than likely, you're going to discover something that you had never seen before. And you'll take that one out, and then all the other issues in your life are going to change. They're going to become much easier. And so it's the most efficacious means. If you're going to root out your defects, you have to know what they are. Everyone from Socrates through all the spiritual writers say, know thyself. You have to know what your defects are, and that means because we're extraordinarily blind to ourselves spiritually, we need the grace from Our Lady to do so. So ask her to reveal what that defect is, and then you can start building the virtues that are opposite of that, overcome that defect. You'll get greater strength. The spiritual battle will become easier. You actually might even eradicate certain demons out of their life as you build the virtue, the psychological compatibility that you have with demons as a result of the defect evaporates. It starts to change. You'll get more intellectual clarity, all of it. And so I'll leave you with this. I mentioned that diabolic attack is sometimes the sign of God's predilection. It's a sign that he loves all of us here. All of us have to deal with just the diabolic nature of what's going on in our church and in our culture. But it also means that if we respond to God and be faithful to grace, which is one of the principal ways of being holy, if we do that, then our ability to grow in holiness, the opportunity for holiness and the profundity of our holiness beats almost every generation before.